I'm Michelle Graves, your host on today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm glad to have you here. Now, at The Power of Money, we are interested in three things happening. First, we want you to get the necessary education so that you and your family can make the decisions that will impact positively on you in your financial life. The second thing is that you be empowered to prosper. I only want the best for you. And you can only get that if you have education and then the drive to make it happen. And the third thing that is so important to me is that you recognize that life is more than a journey and that you be energized so that you can begin to participate in the truly joyous experience of living. So, here's to empowerment. Here's to education, and here's to energy. I'm Michelle Graves, your host, Power of Money, and here we go. And here we go. It's me on the set solo for this next hour, but the subject matter and content is going to be incredibly important for you as my viewers. I just concluded an interview with an amazing man speaking about death and dying in the funeral industry. And of course, nobody likes to talk about this like we don't think it's going to happen to us. And he gave an awesome interview. I'm going to have him back to talk about more specifics. But I wanted to follow that interview with my own comments, perspective on after the funeral, and hopefully give you some thoughts and give you some help in moving forward with your life. Because just like the birth of a baby is a part of life, so is transitioning. And so I'm going to talk about it because you all know I like to talk about things that will give you a level of understanding so that you and your family can get through some things. And funerals and losing loved ones, losing friends, losing your husband, spouse, that takes all of us to another level. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been on earth, how much you got this. This one is not something you're going to be prepared for the most part. Some people, but that's a rare bird. So what I'm going to talk about this next hour is specific to you and your loved ones and the whole process of grieving. Grieving is when the heart begins to sob. Yeah, did you know that the heart is actually the seat and the root of our deepest emotions, not on the soul level, which has to do with your thinking and how you process things, but on a very, very visceral, hard level, the heart begins to weep. If you are sleeping at night and going through grieving, you can actually hear the heart leaking. It's like it's crying. And you say to yourself, particularly if you're a rational person, and we all like to think we are, but I'm getting ready to open you up to some things that aren't rational, aren't cut and dry, aren't cute as cupcakes. And that is grieving and how to get through it. And incidentally, I don't even know if that's an appropriate title, how to get through it, because grieving is something that actually never ends. It just does not overwhelm you. It just doesn't. And let me just say for everyone viewing, you have to know I'm saying that what I'm sharing, parts of it may apply to you and parts of it may not. But I will tell you as a fact that until you've gone through this, it's not going to make any sense at all. But once you begin to see how it feels, and it's more a feeling than anything else. It's an emotion that comes from your heart. A heart can be broken. Yes, when you say my heart was broken, a heart can be hurt. It can feel hurt and pain. That cannot be rationalized or explained away. All you can say is that it will get better sometime. I'm not even prepared to say how long. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I'm just a woman who has had a tremendous amount of experience in the world of the dying. And not just within my family, but also with others in handling estates and handling people's money and transitioning families through probate. All that stuff I've done since my 20s. So that's 40 years, okay, of dealing with this and dealing with my own hurts and my family hurts. And we can go on and on and on. So I want to, before getting into this, I want to precede this with a disclaimer, which is, no. I'm not a psychiatrist, although you may need to see one if you can't rebound from this thing. I'm not a psychologist trained in doing analysis and helping you. I'm not in the medical profession. I'm in the insurance and banking industry. And again, specializing in retirement, specializing in widows and widowers and medical problems that result in outcomes that are not good all the time, giving me a basis. And that's the reason that I'm talking about this today. It's quite timely because we're now living in a time in history, thanks to the baby boomers, of which I'm one, but also thanks to the fact that so much is happening in terms of health and people having conditions that are non-curative. Translation, you're not going to get any better. That may end up with you leaving Earth. I don't know where you're going. I have no idea. I just know that when life ceases from a human, they are officially dead. So the aftermath of that is what I want to talk about. For many, many, many people, this is a touchy subject. But there are many of us walking around, and I say us because I'm not isolated from you. I deal with many of you, I listen, I talk, I share, and a lot of people, just because of the rate of people leaving, are experiencing grief. What level of grief? I don't know. Everybody experiences it differently. Some people, it comes, and then an episode or an encounter or even a movie or a music will trigger a remembrance. A picture will trigger a remembrance, and then you find yourself weeping internally again. Do men grieve? Absolutely. They grieve differently in many cases from females who are, we're in a society and a culture where it's acceptable for women to cry and to do other things, less acceptable for men. But I do feel that men have a tear inside of their eye and weeping in their heart. The heart is not sexist, male and female. We all have beating hearts. All of us experience love. All of us experience rejection. All of us experience hopelessness. All of us experience a myriad of things that happen to our emotional well-being. All of us have, currently are going to experience the loss of somebody near and dear to us. And that loss is going to translate into grieving, which is when the heart begins to cry. So, what are you saying, Michelle? I'm saying that let's talk about it, really, because families today are all over the place and doing everything. And you get a first glimpse of what grieving looks like when you're at the funeral. And some families grieve quietly. Some individuals within a family just act up I mean, like, whoa, what is happening? They're grieving. It wouldn't matter what you said to them because they're not here. They're someplace else. When that encounters and comes your way, it may come as a shock, but it doesn't come as a shock with me because I've seen people pull guns out at funerals, wanting to destroy more lives. They don't even know why they did it. When they settle down, why do you do that? They don't even know why, because something triggered during their period of grieving to spin them over the top. Some people will be quiet and say nothing and then go home and literally try to commit suicide. I'm just talking to you. I'm keeping it real. Some people will, through their grief, will try to manage it, not understanding that it's not something that can be managed. It's something that you have to go through. And in going through it, you learn a lot about yourself, about your own ability or inability to deal with permanent loss, because a death is final. Unless you believe in reincarnation, I don't. But if you do, that's another conversation. But if the majority of us believe as I believe, which is when a loved one is gone, there are no repeat performances. It's over, it's finished, it's sealed. This is why the closing of the casket at the cemetery is always so hard. You can do fine throughout the service, but when you get to a cemetery and you see them lowering that casket into the grave, and not all cemeteries do that. Many of them wait until later. But I've had both. But the most sorrowful experience is seeing a loved one lowered into a grave vault. And then, boom, and then the dirt. Just on a visceral level, so hard to even bear. And don't let it be a widow or a widower. The widow typically can't hold it well. The children can't hold it well. And yet, this is an area that none of us really want to talk about. We experience it, but nobody wants it. It's like it's a little dark thing. There's nothing dark about grieving. What it does tell you is that you are officially a member of the human race, and that you get to experience what that feels like. And I don't care how stiff-necked you are, it is a feeling. It's a horrible feeling. And as I said earlier, it comes and goes. So you say, well, I'm in this now. My husband's been gone for a year, and I can still feel him. I can still feel his presence. I can still, in the morning when we drank coffee together and we shared, I can still feel him. Perfectly normal because our subconscious imprints everything. Our subconscious is like a big fat computer that records everything, including emotions. And so when you find yourself having those moments, just recognize that it's okay. It's okay to stop and pause, to reflect, and to cry if need be. It's okay because it is a reflection that facilitates the healing. It's when you are able to look back and to think about that person and the joy they gave you, or maybe not joy. Maybe they were just a pain in the rear end. But it was a memory, and it's there. And it will resurrect from time to time. So again, as I share with people, be clear. This is a road you've never walked before. According to statistics, death is at the top of the list, surpassing divorce, surpassing job loss, surpassing family breakups. Death is way over the top in terms of how people function. And when I share this, that there are thousands and thousands of people walking around right now, and you may be one of them, who are unable to move forward because this experience has literally frozen them, psychologically frozen them into a place where they cannot move forward. They literally are stuck. And for this reason, I'm talking about it on the air because it needs to be talked about because I encounter it all the time. The first thing, again, is acknowledging that grieving is a necessary part of life. We grieve over many things. And our soul, that's the area that we process and emotions and thinking, etc. Our soul doth have a hard time on many levels. But death opens up a different door, and that's the heart. And that's why that's serious. Please, please do not try to gloss over this thing. I'm not saying that your life needs to stop, but I am saying to you that it is not business as usual. One of the things that you have to come to a recognition is that it takes time. It takes time to heal a broken heart, by the way. When the heart's been broken by a failed marriage, failed relationship, that takes time. But death takes it to another level. It really does. So if you are willing to invest upfront the time to allow you to go through it, you will be so much better off on the end. This is the truth. If you operate in denial, this isn't happening to me, I'm bigger than that, I'm better than all these platitudes that mean nothing when it happens to you, this is going to be very bad at the end. Why? Because the heart has not healed and it's beginning to take a toll on you. And I know many of you have probably run into people like this, and maybe it's you, where you become the quintessential cynic, which is, why am I still here? Well, that may be a good question. I don't control time or destiny. I believe in a higher power, and I believe that all of us have a time and a season, and then we're done. If we did not leave a good legacy behind, then what a sad state of affairs when you do go to meet your king. Really? Come on now. So let's refocus and talk about the grieving, how it manifests. With some people, uncontrollable crying. With some people, uncontrollable depression. They fall into a dark place and they cannot get out. For real, they cannot get out because their heart's involved. Medications will not do the job. They won't. They'll do a little bit, but they won't do the job because of where you are. Some people developed a drive. They have to be work because they're trying to hide the sorrow. So they envelop themselves into work and into enterprises and into anything that is mechanical, because you can control the mechanics, but you cannot control grief and the level that you will experience in grieving. The world looks very dark. It does, because for you, and I should just use the term we, for all of us that have gone through this, it just looked like a very dark and scary place. You feel very vulnerable, and you actually feel, believe it or not, very alone. So my challenge to you is, if you feel alone, then take alone time. Acknowledge it. I feel very lonely. I feel very sad. Acknowledge it. Don't try to put a stiff upper lip. Acknowledge that you may need some quiet thought time. I'm not saying a day. You may need a long time. particularly if it's dealing with the loss of a loved one or a spouse. If you've had a loving relationship, loving, giving, sharing, collaborative relationship with another individual for a large portion of your life, or sometimes it doesn't even have to be large, but it can be the richness of it was so fulfilling that there you are. You may need time. This is not the time to say, I want to do something. This is the time to get quiet and to be at peace with yourself and to begin to look forward, not backwards, forward at the person that you're going to be after you come through this. Yes, you will get through it. How long? I have no clue. I'm serious. People still carry memories until they leave Earth. But a memory is not the same as grieving, because grieving, again, is the heart crying. You can feel it. You can get quiet and hear it. It's very, very, very painful. So what are my suggestions? And what have I seen over the years? And I've seen a lot. Identifying the good times. And it's not to say there weren't bad times, but for your heart thrives on hope and joy. Your heart does not thrive on negative and toxic. In fact, if you dwell on that negative and toxic enough, you will be up out of here. Oh yeah, you can actually cause your heart to go into a heart attack and shut down permanently. I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I'm talking to you directly. So again, first step is acknowledging that what you're going through is what you're going through, that you are experiencing grieving, and it comes out of the heart, and it doesn't end because you want it to end. You cannot do another activity and that feeling or sensation is going to go away because it's still there. Now, I do encourage everyone who is experiencing grieving to not pull away from people. I mean it. Don't pull away. Don't pull away from humans, because you may find that there are many other people that have the same situation going on. The other thing I encourage for those of you who are going through grieving and you don't seem to be able to break free of the sensations is consider being a part of a grief group. Many churches, and you can go into Google and type it up on your computer, on grieving groups. These are people that come together every week and they talk about life, and they've gone through some rough things in terms of death, and they're grieving, but they find that there is consolation by being in the presence of other people who have had a similar experience. Not identical to you, everybody's experience is different, but they all share the commonality of a heart that is bleeding. So again, it appears to me, based upon what I've observed, that people that are going through grieving do very well in groups where they can be in the presence of other people who are going through it and get words of hope and consolation. It does make a difference to know that other people care, and they may not care about you, but they share a commonality of the experience and can be very helpful to you. Another thing you may want to consider while you're going through this period of transition, I say it's transition because you're transiting from one place to another place. So it is a period of transition. And so you want to tend to yourself very carefully. Don't be rough about yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Please, whatever you do, do not tell yourself or let anybody else tell you to get over it. In fact, if someone says that to you, you probably need to put a line through their name, because that's not a person that you want to transition into your new world after you're out of this. That's not somebody you want around you. And people say it because in many cases they don't understand. And the other reason is because they haven't resolved their own grief issues. They say to you, don't get over it, but they haven't gotten over it. So again, that's projection, and you don't need that. It's perfectly okay for you to spend as long as you need to spend. Now, there's some people that say, and I'm sure you've heard this, well, you need to get on with your life. Well, who's to say what your life is? They're not living your life. You're living your life, and you're trying to do the best you can, how you can. But I will just say those two things because I hear this from so many people in the course of conversations. Well, you know, she needs to get on with her life, or he needs to get on. And I look at them in amazement like, what planet did you come in here from? How are you to say something like that about another person? Have you experienced any losses? And many times people say, I did, but I got over it. And I said to myself, and it left you with a real hard shell. It left you covered with a real hardness and callousness because you didn't give your heart a chance to heal wholly and properly, but you accelerated the button because you wanted to be something that you can't be. You can't. You just have to let it go. I think, and this is my own observation, the first thing that occurs to a person when they get bad news of a person's demise is they go into shock. They do. They go into shock. They don't know what to do. They just go into shock. It may include just like something has hit you hard in the face. Some people may not be able to stop crying. Some people may not be able to stop laughing. If you believe that, they just start laughing uncontrollably. They just laugh and laugh and laugh. And if you're not sensitive, you would misinterpret that behavior as being something it is not. Maybe laughter is the only way that they can keep from going deep in. So they start laughing, and there they are laughing. Some people begin to run. They literally run out the house and just run. And they run until they cannot run anymore. And then they collapse. And then they begin to cry. Or they go into, again, shock again. But that's the first manifestation that something is going on inside of me. And I'm trying to process it, but the brain won't let me. It just simply goes into shock. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? And actually becomes a very selfish thing, which, by the way, grieving is selfish because you tend into you, okay? Grieving is not a group activity, although you can go to resource organizations and have a group experience and sharing. That's not the same as what you are necessarily going through. So I put this out. The first thing is shock. Total. Some people cannot control their vital organs. They begin to eliminate uncontrollably all over everything. Body is in shutdown. And then the brain. And the brain begins to go into automatic pilot to try to keep you even keel. Because if you cannot control your brain, then you are going to have other problems. So the brain actually begins to release a chemical to sedate you. Isn't that something about the human body? The brain begins to release chemicals to numb you so that you will not experience what you could experience full force. It begins to go into automatic. The brain is programmed. I gotta save this person. She can't handle it. He can't handle it. So it begins to release chemicals into your blood system to help you through this. So this is why I share with people during a funeral, and you come and you greet the family and all the above. The family does not remember a whole lot because they're in shock. If it's an immediate funeral, if you're talking about 3 weeks down from a cremation or memorial, it may be a little more bearable, but the shock is still there. And remember, shock, the purpose of shock is electricity. And then the brain comes behind and it begins to release chemicals to calm you down, at least for functionality. So you're going to go through the shock. And then after the shock and the numbness and all of those things that follow that occurrence, then you will go back into a place of what I call mental displacement, forgetfulness, inability to cope, randomness. Why? Because death is probably the most stress-creating activity out here. And again, the brain can only do so much. It's releasing chemicals trying to keep you on even keel. You won't remember things. You'll forget. You'll sleep a lot in many cases. You may go into a place of hyperactivity, not doing constructive things, just busy. All a part of the process. Be aware of what is happening to you and don't try to stop it. Don't. Just embrace the change and know that I'm going to get through this. I don't know how, I don't know when. I just know that I will get through this at some time. So you are going through all of this transition, and then, as I said, as the numbness begins to wear off, that's from the brain backing up. The brain is looking at you and making some determinations about your personality. Now, some people are not as contemplative about that occurrence, and they may be down-spirited for a couple of weeks, and they may appear to bounce back. But again, it's a little bit deeper than that. It is, because that bounce back factor simply means that you haven't given yourself time. You haven't given yourself time to get through it so that you can get on with it. And I stress over and over and over again to my viewers, please give yourself time. Please give yourself time. Please give yourself time. Said it 3 times. That should seal it. Give yourself time. Now, you say, but I gotta work. I gotta make a livelihood. This is very true. Most of us do. And that's a good thing, because work is a habit that is ingrained in your subconscious, the rhythm, the orderliness, you having to be there on time. May I suggest that you get through the day. Get through the day until the day becomes easier. And there may be a lot of days that you don't even know, can I get out the bed? Yes, you can, and yes, you will. And get through the day. Doesn't have to be extraordinary leaps, just get through the day. And be mindful of your environment and your surroundings. Other people may not be conscious of what you're experiencing and may not be sensitive. They may say things that are incredibly cruel in your current state of mind that would not have been so cruel in an earlier state of mind. Because remember, your brain is trying to keep you in a state of anesthesia, numb. I can't handle this. If a person tells you this on the job, believe them. You say, well, I'm not doing their job. Well, what about a little bit of compassion? What about trying to help them? because they're having a hard time getting through the day. And I know we live in a time right now where love needs a little help because people are not loving and not empathetic and not caring the way we used to. But when you see a person in that place, give them some love, help them, take the slack. It's not going to fire you, it's not going to demote you, and it will change for the better. They won't always be like that. They won't always be like that. That's all I can tell you. It's a like that type of thing when a person's going through grieving, okay? When children go through grieving from the loss of their parent or parents or their siblings, and children do go through grieving, they just grieve differently. When I say grieve differently, they need lots of love, lots of attention, lots of tactile touching. They need to know that they're safe, because a child views death in a different way from adults. Children don't have enough information inside of them to know where that person goes. You say, oh, they went to heaven. Well, what's heaven? Where's that at? Are people nice? And because adults tend to want to gloss over it and not really address the child's heart, then things happen not so good, because the child doesn't get through that period in a holistic way. And that's what you want. Be sensitive to children, very sensitive to children who have experienced loss as a result of death. I'm not talking about homelessness or divorce. I'm talking about when that person that child loved and loves is gone forever. Children do not have a concept of eternity, and don't even try. Just love them in the present and help them to adjust by, again, sharing those precious things that they like. If you have pictures and things, let them see them having a good time with that loved one. Very important that the family close around them in rank. I wanted to make sure I put that piece about children, because I love children, and I think that adults so badly handle children going through grieving and how they act out, because they don't know what else to do. They don't know what else to do, so they act out and they do things that may appear to be totally out of control, because they are out of control. They don't know what to do with the situation. So I want to make sure that I shared that piece with you for those of you that are dealing with children who are going through this challenge. And let me just say, without going too much further, this may be the time for family counseling as a group. If you have children and you're going through it, the loss of a husband, you may want to consider getting counseling. There's no thing wrong, no thing wrong with getting help from a professional who is accustomed to assisting people through these things. One of the most sorrowful things I see in our country today is that so many widows and widowers have lost their spouses and are depressed or spinning, and there's so few people that pour into them in terms of caring and helping them. So they tend to pull back and isolate themselves. They may go to church, they may go to a meeting, but they are not active participants in living. And I'll tell you, despite your grieving, somehow you got to figure out a way to experience life and what it means and how it affects you. And that means after the shock becomes, you go into another phase called acceptance. And the acceptance is hard work. Because you really wish they could come back. You do. You just are at a loss as to why they're gone. Particularly in marriages, good ones, but even bad ones. the loss is still the loss. So again, as you move forward, it is you move into that place called acceptance, which is, this really did happen. What I am experiencing right now is real. The sorrow, the despair, this is real stuff. But if you can accept it, for some strange way, the brain processes that acceptance as a start toward healing. Because remember, life is for the living. And our bodies are geared to keep us alive, starting with our brain and how we process information. So I say this because if you could come to a place of acceptance, you're still grieving, but you've accepted that life is going to be different for you. And that at some point you're going to have to participate in life. Some people never get to acceptance. I really mean it. Some people cannot ever accept the truth that this happened. So they always are going down memory lane. And again, without trying to shake a few heads and upset people, you can't revisit memory lane as an active present when the plan is for you to accept it and to love the memory, but to keep actively moving ahead. You know, whether you ascribe to Christianity or not, our Lord Jesus was real cryptic about death and dying. And it goes deeper than Lazarus coming out of a grave. He said, let the dead bury the dead. Remember? When everybody was mourning, he said, wait a minute, let the dead bury the dead. But you got to keep living, because God wants you to live. He doesn't want you to stay in a state of perpetual sorrow and sadness. That hurts his heart. I believe that. So coming to the acceptance, and from the acceptance, you can build from that acceptance another way of living. And that living is recognizing that that person may not be physically present with you, but that they will always be in your memory, because that's what the subconscious does. It retains and literally keeps all of those memories safely tucked away. They can come up, and they will come up from time to time as you move into a place of acceptance, which is, this really did happen. I really was in the middle of this. All hell seems to have broken loose in my mind, my thoughts, but I will assure you that things will get better if you allow it. If you allow it. There'll never be another person as great as that person or as wonderful as that person, in your mind speak. But give life a chance to show you different and to show you better. Life, despite all of the headaches, is a rich experience. Really. If it wasn't, people would not be trying to get healthy and healed. They don't want to die. Life is precious. So when we can embrace that, and I'm speaking to you from my heart, so if I sound a bit passionate, it is because over the years I have experienced death on so many levels. Many of us have, but I will tell you that, and the memories are always there, but I do my very best. I do mean this. I do my very best after a reasonable period of sorrow. I do my very best to encourage my heart to heal. And for me, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about Michelle. For me, the best cure for a bleeding heart is to begin to pour into other people and to be willing to listen to them and their sorrows and to be okay with it. I happen to love children. I happen to have an affection for real, for people that don't have much, because I can meet those needs. And by pouring out of my heart more love, consciously pouring out more love, I just found that my heart likes that. And that I'm able to get through that traumatic experience better than closing myself off and becoming just a little fur ball. I say fur ball because I'm furry all by myself, and beginning to pour into other folks. Is this resonating with any of you that are watching today? I believe it is. I believe it is, and I believe that it presents to you an opportunity and a choice, and that is that you can choose today to stay in that dark place, a place of sorrow and misery, open up the wounds that the heart is trying desperately to heal, which is, I can never forget that person, but I was designed to pump blood and to keep living oxygen in your body and your brain. That's what the heart was designed for. It's also the seat of our most precious and deep-rooted emotions. So the heart is very, very, very important. And how you take care of your heart is very important as well, which is why we're focusing on the grieving, because many, many people are walking through grieving right now. And if you're not aware of it or sensitive to it, you may think their behavior is just horrible. Like, what is with them? And the truth is that no one told them it's acceptable to pause, take time out, and to do things a little differently. No one told them it's acceptable to do long walks in the park, to smell the sweetness of life, and to smile. And I will share something with everyone that's watching this. A smile is a healing thing. It is. Who likes to look at people always frowning? Well, they're frowning from the inside out. That's why it's a frown. But when a person can smile and look at life as an ongoing experience full of hopes and dreams, but also full of losses, including the ultimate loss, which is death. There you have it. Can you love again? I get that question a lot from widows and people that have lost a loved one. Can you love again? Of course. By all means, do. Love again. But you know what? You're not going to love again if your heart is all shriveled up like a prune and your countenance is always frowning and intense and not very friendly. But yes, you can love again. There are many, many people I know who have loved again. They've actually loved again. I'm saying this for widows and widowers. Less so for widowers, because the statistics say that widowers tend to get married quickly sooner, and that widows tend to be alone the rest of their lives. And I'm not going to comment on that because I've got a lot of people that have given me feedback on why they've chosen to remain single, and that's certainly your choice. But can you love again? Yes, you can. You can love again. Didn't say it was like the other individual, but the experience nonetheless can be very rich and fulfilling in your life. So I encourage you to embrace the hope, embrace the joy, and know that better days are ahead. If you say so. If you say so. But just be so aware that that is your option, and hopefully you'll make it your choice. I want to conclude today's section on grieving by saying to all of my wonderful, wonderful viewers who have watched me, supported me. Let me tell you, I was on radio I did a show, a talk radio for many years, and I got the news that one of my dearest friends had died of a massive heart attack. I got it right on the air. I mean, that's called raw in your face. And I started wailing on the station. And people started calling in and sharing and consoling and helping me. And I'm going to tell you something. I went to his funeral. I was one of the people that spoke. And I got through that. It was tough. Loved that guy. We were just such friends. But got through it. And am richer for the better. So, lasting comment, know that grieving is a process. I can't tell you how long it will take. Each person is individual. But be aware of all of the stages, that you do go into shock, that you will experience a variety of emotions, many of them that may not feel normal. Your brain is supercharging your blood with chemicals to keep you balanced. Embrace it, but most importantly, embrace your future. That you're still among the living, and that you have so much good left to show the world. That's my parting thoughts. I'm Michelle Graves, your host on The Power of Money. And again, as always, in closing out, I wish you love, I wish you peace, I wish you joy. You take care, and you know I love you. Bye-bye.